How are boomers going to earn income in this pandemic situation and the way the world's going to be changed, in economy and the state of the job market? It's a very scary proposition. The key is that we don't know what that's going to look like yet. So in the meantime, now is the time to get prepared, to do everything you can to be ready so that when you can see where the income earning opportunities are, notice I don't even say jobs, just ways to earn money, you're ready for it. This interview will really help you do that. And it comes from an expert who really knows her stuff, Kerry Hannon. She is a leading authority and strategist on career transitions, entrepreneurship, personal finance, retirement. She has authored 13 books, some of them best-selling and award-winning, such as Never Too Old to Get Rich, The Entrepreneur's Guide to Starting a Business in Midlife, and a new book that's coming out about working from home for boomers. She is also a columnist and contributor to the New York Times, MarketWatch, Forbes, and personal finance and entrepreneur expert on PBS's NextAvenue. And so in this, we go through all of the particular steps that are so critical for you to do right now. Now's the time. Don't wait, or you're going to miss the opportunity. There is a direct link to this interview in the post, and one of the first comments down below that will take you straight to it on ProBoomer. And by the way, while you're there, subscribe, because it's free. And we are constantly offering information to help boomers with not only this phase of life, but what you can do to prepare yourself for the new world and the challenges that await. Because after all, what we're trying to do is make sure that your years ahead are some of your best.
This is a ProBoomer Boomcast. Information, inspiration, insight, and advice from successful thought leaders to help you launch yourself and assure the years ahead are some of your best.
So, Kerry, in your article in MarketWatch, it may be time to think about a career change. You go through some really solid, realistic, smart steps that people can be taking right now. Before we get into those in detail, you also have a more fundamental and overarching point that as long as you're doing this, as long as you've got to pivot or redirect or adjust, why not do it in the direction that is more fulfilling and more appropriate and perhaps even one of the better things you end up doing in your life? Please explain.
Yeah, Paul, it's really an important thing for people to consider. I mean, you have an opportunity perhaps now to really do that soul searching about what it is that you may have had to set aside at some point in your life to sort of pursue your primary career and, pay the bills, so to speak. And when you have an opportunity, a number of years ago, I wrote a book called What's Next? Follow Your Passion and Find Your Dream Job. And for that, I spent about 3 years traveling around the country, meeting people who had done something for 20 or 30 years and then made a 360 to do something completely different. And they were remarkable stories, and it's not that I wanted to do what these people did per se, but I wanted to be like them because they were so brave and believed in themselves, and I was so inspired. And what I learned there and what I see happening today is most people make a career shift or a big transition. It's spurred by something, sort of a life event, something traumatic. And at that time, there were many that had been influenced by 9/11, and others, it's they lost someone they loved to cancer, or they themselves had a health crisis. Any of these kind of life events that really shock you and say, oh my gosh, is this what it's all about? Is this really, what is my legacy? What am I here for? What am I meant to be doing with the time I have here? Because we recognize the fragility of the human experience, and we say, hey, okay, let me take control here. Let me take back and do really some soul searching.
And you raised several really strong points there, and I know for all of us as human beings, our brains literally through evolution are wired against change as a defense mechanism, and it's really hard to do it. But when a situation thrusts you into a situation where you have to change, that seems to enable it even more, because a lot of people are kind of thinking, yeah, wait a minute, retirement, that was really for people who only had a couple of years of life left, and now we've got 20, 30, 40 years of life left. Maybe I should be thinking about doing it differently. And yet you hear, at least I do anecdotally, of so many people who said, I never got around to it, much to my regret. So in a way, where there's a problem, there's an opportunity. Would you agree with all of that?
No kidding. And you don't want to have regrets. You really, really don't want to have regrets. And frankly, Paul, anytime you make a transition, this doesn't happen overnight. Using this opportunity now is a time to really start things in motion. It's not going to happen in the next 2 months or 3 months, but you can start laying the groundwork for what it is that has always sort of been lingering there for you. And again, this whole point of, most people, I mean, there is this longer, healthier life, this longevity bonus that many, generations prior to ours didn't have. And so it's worth paying attention to. We don't have a crystal ball, of course, so not everyone might enjoy that. But in fact, you should plan for it. And, one of my favorite people is Mark Friedman from Encore.org. And Mark has said to me, when you're at 60 and you think ahead, you may have 15, 20 more years to do something really to make an impact. And that opens up the possibilities for maybe some new education you might want to add to your wheelhouse, or what kind of work you want to do. And it can be for pay or not for pay. It can be anything that gets you up in the morning and helps you feel like you're making a difference in the world, and at the same time in your own life. It's a double win.
Yeah, and to that point, I know for me personally, and I put this forth in several ways too on ProBoomer, that it's largely come from talking to people in their 30s. When they're like, I hear what you're saying, maybe I should be like completely viewing this phase of life in a radically different way. And for some reason what clicked into mind was, when we're graduating high school or college or whatever, and we see that road ahead and all of these possibilities and how exciting and even daunting it might be, that at this phase, could we not look at graduating from doing everything we were supposed to do, or the career that we got in that we either loved or were grateful for or whatever, but ready for a change? And we've still got decades ahead, and we still have a road ahead, except, and here's my question, there's better knowledge of kind of like what we really want and really don't want in life, and it's an opportunity to really take advantage of not only the time, but our maturity and wisdom. Would you agree?
No kidding. Yeah. Yes. You've got, that's one of the things you really have going for you, because now you honestly do know who you are and what it is that kind of turns you on and what your skills are. I mean, now, again, I think often we need to, and you'll see if we get into my steps to take, is that sometimes we might not recognize all of the skills that we have because we take them for granted. But in essence, you know what you have to work with, and you know what you do like and what you don't like. We've been down this road, so now is your time to step off. And again, nothing that you do at this stage in your life is forever. I like to look at it like a patchwork quilt. You might do this for, 3 to 5 years. You might turn and do something completely different, or you might do a couple of things at the same time. This isn't like your linear career. This is a whole new way of approaching your working life that is quite different than that pattern that we were trained when we were young, that you graduated from here, you graduated from there, you took this job, you got promoted, you moved along. That's not how it's going to work today. And also, when I went back anecdotally and I did a update of my book, What's Next, a paperback version of it, and when I returned to my people, a third of them had moved on to doing different things. They had either sold the business that they had started, or they had shifted to do something different, or they'd added new things to their package of services that they were doing. So it's really exciting to say, hey, just get started. Do that one baby step and realize it's not forever. So don't panic about, if I make this decision, this is like whoa, I'm going down that road. You don't have to. No one's telling you you have to. You just take it a step at a time.
Well, you hit on, we're going to get into your steps and the how, and to set that up, you hit on really one fundamental mindset that I'd like you to give us some guidance on, and that is that you have to be, you cannot be conventional or traditional in your thinking here. You have to be really blank slate, even as you said, creative and imaginative and broad vision on it. And that was terribly ineloquent of me, so please help me out here. What's the mindset we need?
Well, it's true. I find that in the old days, and I'm not saying that people don't say, oh, I'm going to reinvent my life. You're not reinventing yourself. You are redeploying skills that you already have and ramping it up to another level or a new direction. And what's so exciting about that, Paul, is you can get a little nervous, right? You're trying something new. You might fail. Oh, my gosh, you might fail. And you can't look at it that way, because what this does is it sort of ramps up the adrenaline, and it gets you going in a new direction that, there's that possibility for the unknown. And isn't that fabulous? I mean, to be able to tap into that energy of excitement and of, that adrenaline that comes from something new, and the possibility that whoa, I don't know where this is going to lead me.
So as we head into each one of these, I'll make an endorsement of that as a bit of an encouragement. So in transitioning to starting ProBoomer, which is a new endeavor for me, where I inadvertently went through a lot of this process, my number one thing is that and I hate to use the cliche, but it is about the journey. Right this moment, I am excited and loving and talking to you and being engaged with it. The challenges that I'm facing, the changes that I'm making. It's fun, it's energizing, it's meaningful, and it's also kind of like what I want to do. And so just doing it for me is huge. And I'm sure that's what a lot of people will find.
Yeah, and it takes a bit of bravery, right? Because it's sort of uncharted territory. But what you're doing is, in your heart, you're making a difference. You enjoy interacting with people and learning, and so it fires off a lot of great energy for you. And if this path, you may expand on this path and go, add to it. This is just, you're just rolling down this path right now, and it's exciting.
It is, and on the one hand, there are the consequences of if I don't do it, so that helps a lot. And then there's the bonus, the cherry on the top, that it's fun and exciting and fulfilling. Okay, so let's get to it.
Yeah.
Step number one: get financial.
That is my favorite one.
Get financially fit.
Yes. See, I have this mantra, Kerry's fitness plan, and there's three pieces of it. And the number one, it's probably good for almost anything you do in your life, but number one is to get financially fit, because in order to make a transition, especially a major transition in your working life or what have you, you really need to be lean and mean. You need to, take a chance. If you're starting over in a new field, you're probably not going to earn what you did previously. And if you're starting your own business, which a lot of boomers like to do, as I wrote about in my book, Never Too Old to Get Rich, you may not be able to pay yourself initially because you are putting the money back into the business to get it traction. So you need to do something really that all of us go, I don't want to do it. Do a budget, okay? Do a budget. How do you spend your money? How can you get lean and mean? Do you have some big credit card debts you can pay down? Hopefully you don't, but you might. Do you want to refinance your home if you can in this market? Who knows? Or if you want to downsize. These are things to consider. It's not going to happen overnight, but this takes time to sort of get financially fit. But when you are financially fit, and perhaps you are already, and I hope so, then it gives you choices. It gives you the ability to make decisions based on what you want to do and not what you have to do. So the kind of work you do, do you have to earn a certain paycheck or not? And so it opens up the realm of possibilities, And I think this is really crucial to kind of liberating your brain to think about what you might want to do. So that is number one. The second thing, which I think you're going to lead into, is my second tip, is to get physically fit, to kind of shape up. Because, and I don't mean running fast miles or bench pressing a lot of weight, but what it is, I walk my dog for, an hour or so if I can every day. But if there's something you can do that is 20 minutes a day, a couple times a week, anything to stay in shape and to eat with an eye to nutrition, this gives you this energy. And people, especially at our ages, when you're, people, women often, and it is usually women say, when I'm speaking, should I dye my hair? Should I get Botox? And I'm like, you know what? Do it if you want to. But what you really need to do is to get fit, because when you're physically fit, you give off this energy, this sort of can-do vibe that people don't know exactly what it is, but they want to work with you. They want to have you on their team. They want your energy, and you feel fabulous. You feel like you have the energy to make these transitions. So I think not only does it help fight ageism, but it also gives you the energy to really step it up and to move in a new direction.
Yeah, and if I can put in an endorsement on that in a couple of things. So number one, well, in the first place, I literally cannot believe I am the age that I am unless I look in the mirror. And I don't feel that way. I don't think that way. And I know one is just my physical activity. And I even find myself concentrating on my posture and how I move, and as well as, doing yoga every morning, which really is just stretches. Half of these, I used to be a soccer player, are just good stretches, but it gets my body moving. Other things that I do. You're right about the attitude, too. Quick story. I've been on conference calls with creative groups because with my other business. And we'll have a couple of initial, 10 or 12 people on a call, some people I don't know. And then we'll have a physical meeting. And I've literally had two instances where somebody, in so many words, said, "I thought you were much younger." And I'm like,
I love it.
Okay, I'll take it. I'll take that. And it's like, what does that say, huh? But to your point, you feel better about yourself. Your body and your mind functions better, and you come across differently, and it's very satisfying. It's very satisfying.
And the third piece of that fitness program, Paul, is to get spiritually fit. And I'm not talking about religion in any big way, and that's fine. But what I'm talking about is kind of what you just said a second ago, yoga. Okay, do you have a yoga practice or a Tai Chi or mindful meditation or something? Again, I walk my dog. This helps me. But is there a place you can carve out for yourself that is centering, that quiets your brain, that calms you down, that gets you in a really good space to kind of let some of the clutter in your life go away? Because that, making a career transition or starting in a new direction, is stressful. I mean, we can sugarcoat it and say, hey, you can do this, but you know what? You can do it, but it is stressful. So having that in your wheelhouse will really help you.
As long as we're on that point, I want to expand, and I'm at least sharing what's worked for me. But also I discovered this because I learned that so many successful high performers, which can mean almost anything, and people who are as successful in whatever way, shape, or form, whether it's business, athletics, or just in their life, is that, to your point, first of all, for me, I actually look forward to getting up in the morning because I have a morning routine. So it's no electronics. I don't wake up checking my emails or Facebook or anything else because those are other people's agendas. So I'm tech free in that respect. I drink a bunch of water, and I've done this for 16 years, and it's been transformative in my life. I do meditation. You can go on here. We go with electronics, but this is okay. You can, for instance, go on YouTube and find millions of different meditations that you can put on in your ears. Guided meditation or music or whatever. Meditation is not a big deal. You cannot completely clear your mind, but it's a time to be calm and actually get your mind going. Number two is when I do yoga, it's all these stretches, and after doing my meditation, that's when I have YouTube on, and I'm listening to people. I'm listening to people like you. I'm listening to whether it's spiritual, business, life, health, diet. While I'm doing it, I'm listening to them and learning. And believe me, that adds up after a period of time. And I go through all of this before I engage with anything. It gets me mentally, spiritually, and physically, foundationally set to launch a great day. And if I rarely can't do it, I notice a huge difference in my whole day and my whole ability.
I love that. Yeah. Yep. You fill your tank.
Yes.
That is just fantastic. That is fantastic.
So next, do your internal review.
Yeah, and this kind of segues nicely into what we were just talking about. You know, spend some time really to get in touch with what it is. A lot of people, you'll say, what is it, you know, what's your passion? And they'll be like, oh, I don't know. Like they're afraid to peel the layers back because they'll discover they actually don't have a passion. But, you know, everybody does. So you need to do a little homework. And this can be, you know, a little bit hard for some of us to do. But if you can, I find journaling helps a lot. And if you can, you know, think about what did you love to do when you were a kid? A lot of the people that I've worked with and I've interviewed for my books and so forth, a lot of what they've turned to do in their career transition and their pivot has been related in some way to what they loved as a kid. And I'll tell you just a quick one was a gentleman he had taken retirement from the Navy, and he had been a captain there. I mean, this guy could land fighter jets on an aircraft carrier. But from the time he was a little kid in Baltimore, he loved the circus. Like, he loved going to the circus. And everywhere he was deployed for the Navy, he would find a circus in town. He would get circus magazines. And when he left the military, he could have done lots of things. He could have worked for a defense contractor. He could have, you know, actually gone into commercial, be a commercial pilot, no doubt. But what he did is he ran away with the circus. And he became the company manager for the Big Apple Circus, you know, moving a troupe up and down the East Coast. And I laughed, you know, I'm like, oh, Don, come on, you know, what does that have to do with the military? And he's like, it has a lot. The military and the circus aren't that different. And what he meant by that was not derogatory, but simply that his leadership skills, his management skills, a lot of the things he learned were able to be redeployed in this new thing that he was doing that he loved, and it was a passion from childhood. So I know that seems like a big leap, but think about those things. Write those things down. What do you really love? How can I find work in that field? Is there something I could do, either working for another company, another employer, or a business I could launch myself in that field? And particularly if it was something that was your hobby, Paul, you are the customer, so you already know what might be needed there. You know, and you have to ask yourself those questions. You know, why me? Why now? Why this product or service? That's important. You got to be honest. But these are part of your journaling and that internal search about what are some of the things that really interest me and what am I good at and that sort of thing. But it's a process.
Yeah, and to kind of jump on your last point, because I have had people who, you know, are blocked or whatever in terms of saying, well, I don't know what my passion is. I don't know what my purpose is. I don't, you know, and what did you want to be as a kid? Well, I wanted to be an astronaut. Well, okay, I mean, there could be some peripheral things there. But I've also heard of people saying, okay, well, maybe I don't need a purpose. I need something purposeful. And maybe it's not relating to something as a kid because I'm not interested in that anymore. But I have heard of people looking at what are the things that have caught my imagination or I've had strong feelings about in my adult life, or there were aspects, you know, I'm kind of done with my career or I didn't really like it or whatever, but there were things about it that I really liked, and I even wish that I had more. I mean, is there that kind of alternate assessment you can do, or what's your take?
No, totally. And you know, one of the books I wrote a while back is called Love Your Job. And when I just got so sick of hearing people complain about their jobs, and I'd be out going around the country talking to older workers about how to find jobs, and I'd see the palpable fear in their eyes that they were going to outlive their money, and they needed jobs. And I'd come home and, my friends would be complaining about their boss or so-and-so. And I thought, okay, let's get it together. Either take this job and love it or take it and shove it. And what I found out is what people, when you ask them, what do you really love about your job? It wasn't necessarily the job itself. It was the people they worked with. It was the mission of the company or the nonprofit they worked for. It was the ability to learn new things. So like you said, Paul, if you start pulling it apart, everybody, and I encourage people to go home if you're really miserable, in the work you're doing now, is, write down what do you like about it, what don't you like about it, because there are always going to be things you like about it. And it's just hard. It's easy to focus on the negative. But as you said, you pull that thing apart, you're going to find pieces that, like, I really did enjoy X, and maybe there's a kernel there that I can build on.
Exactly. Deconstruct, or to use the analogy you touched on, separate the chaff. This kind of overlaps into the next, which is do your internal review.
Yeah, so we've done the review here, and actually now so you've done that journaling. What is that exploration process? And you don't have to show it to anybody. This is your own personal document and your own exploration there. And again, this is an opportunity too. You might casually ask people or either colleagues or family or friends, what do you see as my best skills? What do you think I do best? What is, when you think of me, and their answers might surprise you. And again, it's back to what I said earlier, some things we don't even recognize that we're very good at because it's just comes so naturally. But the next thing you want to do is really, sit down and write, do a little review if you look kind of dispassionately at yourself and say, okay, here are the degrees I have. This is a formal education I've had. These are the licenses or certifications I've attained over the years. Hey, I can speak French and Spanish. All right, I've got a second language. I love to do public speaking. I've been told I'm good at that. Put that down. Any capability that you have, jot it down. And really, this takes a little bit of, really scanning the full horizon of who you are. And then think about, okay, what software are you comfortable working with on your computer? Because as we know, moving forward, remote working is not going away after, this period of time. And in fact, it's going to be even more entrenched. I have a book coming out, Great Pajama Jobs, and it's all about remote working. But when I was putting that book initially together, I was citing that remote work has already started to become a global trend as employers started to recognize. And, mostly younger workers, too, they want that autonomy and flexibility, and they're asking for that as a benefit. So now that a lot of companies have gotten used to or are getting used to having workers logging in, I think there's going to be even more focus in this kind of remote work. So it's critical that you know what software you're good at. What are you comfortable at? And then you look at, your soft skills, which we mentioned there briefly before, and
which are a strength of the older worker, because you've had so many soft skills just have to come through maturity and experience.
Oh, I love that. Yes. And we know how to communicate, we in all different formats, and that's very important. And communication skills are something that you really polish up over the years, and also the ability to stay level-headed and manage through crisis situations and so forth. I mean, we've seen it, we've done it, we know how to kind of balance things out and to reach out and ask for people we know. We have this great network of people we can reach out to find solutions to problems as well. But soft skills are very important, and I would rate communication right up at the top of that one, writing and verbal and so forth. But also, don't limit yourself to what you've done at work. If you've been out of the workforce for a stretch of time or whatever, you may have been caregiving for an older relative. And I had my mother, who's 90, has been with us, and that takes a lot of being a patient advocate. You're kind of a financial manager. You're doing a lot of different skills that can be translated to the workplace. You're a project manager. You're lots of things like that. So you're and not in my case, but some people, you're hiring people to help you manage, help them as well. So you've got that stuff. One thing I was going to mention as a resource the Department of Labor has something called the Career One Stop. And if you go to their website, it generates this whole list of skills and job types and work activities. It's really worth looking at. It'll give you some ideas of what you might be missing when you do that kind of search of your own on your own skills.
And two points. First of all, my apologies. This section, just in case people are jotting this down, which I hope they are, was run an account of your current skills and interests. That's what we just went through. And the second thing on your point about don't limit yourself to skills you learned at work or even traditional skills, you have to think about the stay-at-home parent who wants to re-enter the job force. And it may also be that the kids have been gone for a while, but again, out of the necessities of bringing in money or the necessities of having your own thing, whatever, there are so many skills and abilities, to your point, that might not be able to say that for a business you did these things, but you know, anyone who's been a parent knows the skills: emergency planning, conflict resolution, you know, logistics, you know, all of that kind of stuff, which is actually legitimate.
100%.
Okay,
so that's real. Don't ignore that stuff. That's not to be taken lightly.
Well, and by the way, I also want to, something I learned, and I've heard so many people learn to this point, again, of, you know, accounting your current skills and interests, is that in doing for instance, a resume process, people tend to be so humble. I've heard it from so many people, and I did it myself when I hired a professional resume writer many, many years ago when I was making a transition. And she would write something, and I'd be like, whoa, that's overcooking. And she's like, wait a minute, didn't you tell me you did ... And I'm like, yeah. And she'd be like, that's what that is. Oh, well, it sounds too boisterous. It's like, you're trying to get a job. You know, boisterous means being braggadocious and obnoxious, or you're being untruthful. Is this accurate? And I'm like, yes. She's like, well, then that's the way that you need to assert it. And then the second point that I really learned, and I've gotten good feedback on this just, you know, in sharing with people when I've heard what they're going through, is that they would, what I ran into is that I said, oh, you're listing this, and this? I'm like, well, of course I do that, and that. And she's like, well, yes, but you do it. And it was two categories. One is that what you think is so automatic and obvious is worth showing that you actually do it, and you're capable of doing it. And some things that I thought were just common for what I did, she said to other people, that's magical, that's significant. So in other words, don't be humble and don't overlook things that are important to other people.
Good advice. No, that is really good advice.
So your next point, hit the books.
Yeah, and this is a wonderful time if you're going to make a career switch and you're over 50, you're typically going to want to upgrade your skills. And going back to school, there's so many free online offerings today that can really help you ramp up your skills through webinars or podcasts. But there's also courses and certificates online that are affordable. And first of all, anytime you're going to do anything, if you can learn something new, this is the greatest thing on earth. You know, it just fires your brain up. You get excited again. The minute you start learning, your whole way of looking at the world shifts. And it's the greatest way to build resilience into your life if you've kind of been scared or worried about things that are going on in the world or job loss or what have you. If you can just start learning something new, it's proactive. You're feeding yourself. It is just fantastic. And when you're making a shift, the chances are you do need to learn some new things. Or if you're moving into a new career field in general, if you're looking for a new job, look and see what do people who are doing those jobs, what kinds of education do they have? What sort of certificates do they have? What might you want to add in order to make this experience valuable and possible for you? So it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. I'm not talking about getting a master's degree. This is just adding some things into your wheelhouse here that's really going to, really shine up your possibilities of what's out there for you, and also re-energize you intellectually, and you never know what. Once you start learning something, what it may spur you in another direction altogether. And so, or the other thing, Paul, is you might think, hey, this is what I really want to do, and you start taking a class or two, and you go, you know what, that's kind of boring. That's really not what I want to do. So don't get stuck here. This is a chance to explore, and adding to your brain is the best way to do it.
Oh, and you're also right that is the number one thing to keep your brain healthy and your cognition level up, is to learn something entirely new. Also, with all these certifications, that shows that you're up to date, because skilling up is a big need, an inherent need for so many people who are over 50 or boomers. Showing that you're up to date is critical on your next point, which is updating your LinkedIn profile.
Oh yeah. Now, these are nuts and bolts. If you got some time right now, you want to, let's do this. You've been putting it off. Definitely get into that LinkedIn profile, because it's not for every field, not every career path, but for many of us, having a LinkedIn resume, a LinkedIn profile that's current, that's up to date, that really showcases you, that's your calling card. I often tell people they ask me something about myself, and I'm like, just look at my LinkedIn profile, okay? Mm-hmm. I mean, it'll tell you what you need to know right now, and I'm happy to fill in the gaps. But this is your chance to really have some fun. You can write in your summary in your own voice. It's not like your resume. This is a breathing, alive kind of thing. You can go in and change it all the time. You can add a video that you did. You can add I might put this conversation you and I are having right now up online. Mm-hmm. These are the kinds of things you can do that shows people. You can show off your expertise. You can show off your communication skills. All sorts of things you can put up there. And also, you can highlight your volunteer experience. Often employers who are looking at your resume and your background, they make a connection with the interests that you have. They're like, oh, well, she loves animals. She volunteers for this shelter, or she teaches kids, in my case, therapeutic riding for handicapped and disabled kids. She spends a little time doing that. Wow, that's something. I'm interested in horses. I'm interested in giving back that way. And so you make a connection in sort of this subtle way with a possible employer that way. But anyway, there's lots of great ways to do that, and you can also connect with other professionals on LinkedIn. You can find people that are doing the work that you might want to do, you might want to pivot into. You can find them and talk to them. Like, you're not asking them for a job, but you can make a connection and say, hey, can I give you a call, and you can tell me a little bit about what you do. And people love to talk about their jobs.
It's an incredible research tool. It's an incredible networking tool. You also mentioned getting people, and you need to ask, and in some cases they'll even say, write it for me, a recommendation. Because we remember, you used to have 3 references, or people would even have letters of reference. The recommendation in a LinkedIn on your LinkedIn site, and imagine if it's from someone who's a younger worker, which therefore shows that overcomes one of those ageism presumptions that maybe you can't mix with a younger crowd, and that shows the opposite. So there's so much that you can use and leverage with your LinkedIn.
I so agree. You can't just do it once and forget about it. And there's lots of good guidance, even on the LinkedIn site itself, to help you create a really good profile, as well as professionals out there who really do this, career coaches and so forth, that can really guide you on look at your LinkedIn profile and help you sharpen up and put a great picture of yourself. Don't do an old picture. Mm-mm. Don't go without a picture. This seems pretty obvious, but you really do need to have a picture up there of yourself. And I love this thing about recommendations, Paul. It's really, really important. And in today's world, if you have been laid off, and not for your inability to do your job, but for world events, I suggest immediately ask your supervisor to write you a LinkedIn profile. A LinkedIn recommendation on your profile. They will probably be happy to do that for you, and that really will be helpful down the road.
And By the way, if you go to my LinkedIn profile, so Paul Long, Long, on LinkedIn, and feel free to connect with me or follow, I actually have a article that I wrote in there about that picture and the importance of it, because when you go on a LinkedIn site, what's the very first thing you see? You look at the person's picture. You have immediately gotten an impression of them. And if it's not, you don't have to spend $2,000 to get a professional to do it, but there are fundamental approaches that says this person's, that you get a good impression from him, from he or she to move forward. So very, very good points. Next, though, is like a real, I can hear the groans now, revamp your resume.
Yeah, you do have to do it. And in fact, I personally hadn't done one in about 20 or 30 years, and I had to do one recently, and I was like, are you kidding me? So I called my niece, who is in her late 20s, to ask her to share me hers, so I could use it as a model.
Well, that sounds good. That's a good idea, yeah.
And I'm always telling people to do this, and I'm like, wait a minute, I hadn't done it myself. It is not rocket science, but it is really not easy either. You have to pay attention. But here it is, and I always say this is not this is not an obituary. It's an advertisement. So keep it short, keep it snappy. You don't need to know every job you ever had in your life. Just the last 10 years is good. And put, for more experience, a little box. You might just have a tiny little thing, other experience. You don't have to tell everybody everything. But Paul, what you said earlier is really important here. It's people, you might think, well, if you put down a title or something you did, that everyone gets it, what that was. Well, they don't, especially if it's a younger person hiring you. So it's really important to tell in the field they call them CAR stories, CAR, your challenge, your action, and the result. People love stories. They want a narrative. So you want to say, you did X and you brought a job in 3 months ahead of time, or, you want to quantify it some way and tell a nice little story. So any way you can build these stories into your resume is great. AARP actually has a really good AARP resume advisor, which it's a free expert review. It's worth looking at their site just if that interests people. But ultimately, you want to be pitching, especially this conversation we're having about career transition, of how the skills that you used in other positions are applicable to what you're looking for today.
Exactly.
So that's a little tricky, but spend a little time and see how you can massage that so that it makes sense. And again, and if you're doing a career transition in your LinkedIn profile too, in that summary section, you want to make it clear why this new arena you're moving into or you're exploring is it strikes to your heart and why you're doing this. People, you're not just doing it on a whim. You have a reason for it.
Yeah, and in a talk that I recently gave, and I was able to tap into a lot of interviews that I've done with experts such as John Tarnoff and Dr. Julian Latham and David Cooley and others, a couple of things. As David Cooley said, you got to connect the dots. You have to look at those people you're trying to connect with to hire you or bring you in or something like that, and you have to tell them what your value is to their situation. Because I think the way it used to be for us, and at least the way I perceived it, was, well, here's my resume. Look at all the stuff I've done. And even if I applied CAR to it, it's like, well, I've got 1,500 other resumes over here that are equally qualified. What's your differentiator? It's really kind of proving and putting forth what it's looking at it from their point of view. It's quite frankly, it's like selling. What does the customer want, and how can I convey it to them that makes them buy my product, me, versus something else?
No, it's really true. It's not about you, and that's the piece that is so hard to get our head around, because we're trying to sell ourselves because we want them to hire us or be our client or whatever it is. So we're selling ourselves, but really you need to be thinking about what is their need. What can you do for them? What can I do for you? It's not about what can you do for me. So that's That's a really hard one to get your head around, but really important.
So with it said that a resume is absolutely necessary to have, it's not something that you want to depend on, especially when it's dubious results or a lot of bots that are looking for the right keywords, which, by the way, is something you have to keep in mind. And there are free services out there that will scan what the job description is and what's in your resume and see how well the keywords match up. But moving on from that, the number one ideal way to find what you're looking for is your next point, networking.
Yeah, but that's the biggie. No one gets hired from going to a job board and sending a resume. Truthfully, electronically, maybe a handful. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit there, but going to those job boards is great to get ideas of who's hiring. And the next thing you need to do is go to that company and say, okay, maybe through LinkedIn, whatever it is, who do I know that works at that company? And then you got to find a live body, somebody who knows you or knows you through somebody else who can get you to a real person who works somewhere. Because, it is companies hire people the old-fashioned way, someone they know or somebody they know knows. And so it's always been that way. It's even more so today because companies are fearful of making bad hires because it's expensive to hire people. So it's really important who you know to help you get in the door for an interview. You're on your own after that. But networking in that sense is really important. It's really important if you're starting your own business and you want to find new customers or you need to find a board of advisors to help you. It's asking people who you know. And so one phrase I like is networking is one letter away from not working. So
excellent.
So get out there and do it. Seek out people in fields that you're interested in moving into and jobs that interest you, people who have done a startup and say, hey, in your area or, in that field you're going into or even your local community, ask for advice. It's all about reaching out. And the other piece of networking, Paul, that you know as really deeply yourself is that if you're looking for a job or you're looking to make a transition and you're really at a point where you feel stuck, go out and get out of your head and into the world. Go volunteer somehow. And in today, maybe you need to do that online, virtually. But when you start helping other people and doing things, and I'm saying volunteering by using your skill set, so it's skill-based volunteering, but you're adding to your resume there. You're, so you don't have any gap there. You're actually doing something that is skill-related, and you're making new connections. And you never know who might be able to help you move in the direction you want to go or give you an idea, or you might say, hey, I really like this nonprofit. Maybe there's something right here for me or in this area for me that is something I hadn't thought about.
Well, and speaking of haven't thought about and opening yourself up to other possibilities, because, by the way, you're right. I mean, I believe that you start putting yourself out there, you're thinking about it, you're trying all these things. Things avail themselves to you, whether it's through coincidence or your awareness, but you have to be open up to it. And in terms of getting that help, your next point is consult a career or retirement coach.
Yeah, I do. If you can, I think it's very important to have somebody who isn't your spouse, your partner, your best friend, your colleague, really to use as a sounding board to help you navigate this. And often if you've lost a job at this age and you're kind of stuck, and you're depressed, and it's really, really hard on your ego. You feel cut off from your social network, all kinds of things. And it's a blow to your ego as well. So there's a lot of stuff that it's really helpful to have somebody who's unbiased, who doesn't know you necessarily, just take a look and give you a fresh set of eyes to inspire you, to help you redo that resume, to help you redo that LinkedIn profile, to help you think about careers or jobs or fields that might be good for you right now and help you kind of jumpstart. So whether it's a career coach, a retirement coach, depending on what stage you're at, I find it super helpful. And you can do it by telephone, virtually, by Zoom, or what have you. Skype. There's great ways to work with somebody. They don't have to live in your community to do this, and it doesn't have to be expensive. You usually want to do a couple of meetings with them because in order for it to truly be useful, but they can help you, understand your personality better if you haven't done that digging. There's lots of good things about it. So I encourage people, ask friends who they've worked with, or there are a lot of good sites to help you find someone.
And briefly, let's define retirement coach, because that can be a bit of a misnomer, because I've actually heard some people say, well, why do I need somebody to coach me on how to retire? It's a multi-decade vacation. What cruise line? But a retirement coach is actually something different than that. What's your definition of a retirement coach?
Well, it's somebody who looks at your whole life holistically. When you stepped away from what was your primary career, technically maybe you're in your 50s, mid to late 50s, 60s, and you're trying to put together a balanced life for yourself, one that combines, work and leisure and volunteerism and kind of hits a bunch of different buckets, but puts it in balance. Most of us are going to need to and want to continue to work in what was traditionally retirement. And it's not, for some people who have saved adequately for retirement, this might be simply a time for working and having that extra income as a safety net so you don't have to dip into your retirement accounts too soon. For others, it's truly a necessity because they haven't set aside enough to truly live out what we talked about earlier in our conversation, this potential longevity bonus. So you want to continue to bring in income, but maybe you don't need to fire on all that intensity that you had in your primary career. It might be something different, and a retirement coach can help you figure that out. And how can you do that? And then also, as we know, working is, it's not a four-letter word. Work is something that keeps us mentally and socially engaged as well as a paycheck. So there's so many good things about it. And so what we define as a retirement coach might be somebody who's really helping you put together this next chapter of your life. And it can be a chapter that's, 20 years or so long. So let's get the path started, right? What do you think? I want your definition.
I think that's pretty good. I think it's somebody that can help you through the process and give you a process and help shepherd you based on who you are. That's the unique thing about it, is that it's somebody who can help you figure you out. And in doing that, obviously sharing with them. And it's I think a good coach helps support you get to where it's right for you. It's not them telling you what to do. It's them helping bring it out in you so that you have that epiphany and you know how to apply it and such. So maybe a little broader definition, but I think the same as you said.
Yeah. So it's very, but not everybody's going to be able to do that. But if you can, it is a helpful a step.
And just talking to people, you can have a friend. There's masterminding. Maybe somebody else who's going through the same thing, and having that weekly, now Skype or Zoom call or phone call, or social distancing, where you're both sharing what you're going through. Because I do that with others, for instance, in trying to get this business started. And I find in trying to help them, I come to my own realizations. It's the point is, don't do it alone, and research and realize other people are going through the same thing, and you can support each other, and other people have gone through it, and you can learn from them. So you put all this.
Two other things I wanted to say that kind of go into that circle back a bit to networking too, is keep in mind too, when you're networking with people or so forth, always ask people what you can do for them too. Is there something you can help them out with? And that's really an important thing. This is a two-way street. And also, it's asking them what you can do for them. But then the other question to ask somebody that you reach out to for guidance or so forth is who else should I call? Is there somebody else you think would be interesting for me to talk to?
Excellent.
And again, people want to be helpful. It really, we are good. People are good at heart. And anything we can do to help each other out, especially in this chapter of our lives, I think is really worth noting. And I've rarely found somebody who didn't want to help me. And I'm sure when you started your business, Paul, you had the same thing. They're like,
absolutely.
Hey, you should really talk to so-and-so, or you should really talk to so. I mean, it's so important that we all help each other out.
You brought up two really strong. I'm really glad you did this. Number one, for instance, everybody that you talk to saying, give me one or two names, if you could right now, of somebody else you think I should talk to. With ProBoomer, I do that all the time. And in fact, in a previous interview that I did, who else do you think you should talk to? Oh, you ought to talk to Kerry. She's working on this article. And actually, you and I had already connected via email, but hadn't you? And I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, that's right. But the other thing is asking someone for help rather than for something. And I'll give you a quick, so in other words, if you say to me, Paul, you know where you're getting jobs? I'm like, yeah, no, okay. Paul, can you help me? Totally different. And here's my quick story. In the news business, it's brutal. It's brutal, especially for an on-air job. I had a co-anchor, and news directors would get resume tapes back in the tape days all the time. And what they do is they throw them in a closet, and when they had to fill a position, they'd go through it and they'd watch the first 30 seconds of it, maybe. And what she did is she wrote to a bunch of target markets that were bigger than the market she and I were in at the time, and said to news director, I need your help. Would you be willing to look at my tape and tell me if you think, I'm heading in a good direction to work in a market your size? And I think she had a 90% response rating. She didn't send the tape. She asked if it'd be okay. 90% response rating of these grizzled news directors saying, yeah, send me your tape. They would look at the whole tape, and one of the people hired her because she asked for help, not a job.
Yes. I love that. Yep.
Okay, so incredible list. Get financially fit, shape up, do your internal review, run an account of your current skills and interests, hit the books, update your LinkedIn profile, revamp your resume, network. I added that. Consult a career or retirement. I added all the extra networks. Consult a career or retirement coach. One last thing, just to put context to this whole thing, and I really appreciate all your time. We're running way over, but it's just too worth it to let go. Right now is a great opportunity, albeit under horrible circumstances. That we're recording this during the pandemic, during the lockdown. We've got more time, we've got more focus, we maybe have more need to be doing this. But also what we're facing is the great unknown in terms of how the state of work and employment and how people can earn money, which is the way I'm almost referring to it now. It's not finding a job, because jobs as we know them may not be there, or may be more limited because of the short term, which is 2 years, or the long term, which is infinite, of how it's going to change things. So I would think, and I'd love your take on this, that we have to broaden our mindset in terms of what our way of making income is going to look like, whether it's starting a business, gig working, meaning freelancing, contracting, part-time work, consulting, or even how full-time work will be. What is your take on it, Kerry?
Oh, incredibly so. What you just said is so true, Paul. We're going to see a change in the work culture, in how we define work as we move into the next phase that we, as we come out of this time in our history. And it's not all negative. I think there's some really positive things that are going to happen here. I think employers are going to recognize that people who work remotely are employees are super productive. They're disciplined. They're energized. They are to be trusted, and they save money because they don't necessarily need the big workspaces. And individuals save money from not having to commute, and so in other ways. But it's going to take some new skills for us to succeed as remote workers, and also to open up the kinds of work we might do. And I'm going to make a shameless plug for my new book, which will be out shortly.
I was about to do it for you, so go for it.
Well, you can
go
do
for
it too,
it.
but
no.
Great Pajama Jobs, which is your ultimate guide to working from home or working remotely. So it's, there in that book I talk about, great, just a smorgasbord of jobs that really lend themselves to remote work. I do a whole section on employers that when I first put that book together, as I was reporting it, we're already on board with remote workers. We're doing a fabulous job. And there'll be more, but these companies I profile will be right at the forefront, so they're worth looking at. And then the final is my Kerry's workshop on how to get a remote job and how to succeed as one. And so there's all kinds of great material there, but it's not going to be your job is going to change, and a lot of it is going to be technology based. So don't be afraid of the technology. Get yourself comfortable, up to speed. Right now, use this time to take some tutorials, whatever it is, just so you understand the way of communication is going to be different, and the way you self-care and take care of yourself, set boundaries, all those sorts of things are going to be really critical.
Kerry, just phenomenal, and heads up, you and I, and we're already scheduling some more interviews to dive into some of these things. For instance, your new book and the work from home thing, which is absolutely, you want to talk about a skill set that you have to have, the ability and the technology to do it, but also the mindset and the habits and making it work for you. I've been doing it for 30 years, and I've gotten it down pat for me, and we're all different. But there's so many other aspects to touch on. Thank you so much for running long on this outstanding information.
Well, thank you. What a pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Kerry.
This is a ProBoomer Boomcast. Information, inspiration, insight, and advice from successful thought leaders to help you launch yourself and assure the years ahead are some of your best.